same time. Now another, well, this is death anniversary. I realized this morning that today, March the 10th, is the 10th death anniversary, or 10th anniversary of the assassination of Courtney Crum-Ewing. Remember Courtney Crum-Ewing? He was assassinated on the evening of March 10th, 2015 in Diamond, where he was protesting and calling on people to come out and vote the government then. The same PPP government was in power at the time. So he started his protest in front of the Attorney General's chambers in Carmichael Street, and then he moved to Diamond, and he was gunned down on the night of March the 10th, 2050. You know, these things, we allow these things to go by. We allow these things to go by. So when I saw it this morning, I thought it important enough for us to adjust the program, to adjust the subjects that we have to deal with this morning, to tell you, because we're not going to assume that all of you know what went on then. We're not going to assume that you know what went on. So y'all indulge me, crave my indulgence, where I'm going to give you a rundown as to what happened on that fateful night and shortly thereafter. As I've said, it was in the run-up to the 2015 election. I think 2015 election was held sometime in April, I think around the 11th of April, 2015. Courtney Crum-Ewing started a one-month protest outside the Attorney General. Anil Nandalal was the Attorney General chambers there in Carmichael Street. He had a daily thing calling for the Attorney General to resign over some comments he's alleged to have made and caught live on making all sort of statement. Crum-Ewing was there calling for him to resign. Then he moved from Carmichael Street and he moved to Diamond, right, on the East Bank. And there is where he was killed. And let me read what it is reported there took place. On the fateful evening, and the headline here is the tragic assassination of political activist Courtney Crum-Ewing, call for justice and accountability. It says on the fateful evening of March 10, 2015, Guyana was rocked by the senseless assassination of political activist Courtney Crum-Ewing as he bravely stood at the intersection of 3rd Avenue on the northernmost road in Diamond. Crum-Ewing was mercilessly shot in the back of his head while making public announcements urging citizens to exercise their right to vote. The circumstances surrounding Crum-Ewing's murder remains shrouded in mystery and controversy. Despite the family's call for an independent investigation with international pathologists and forensic experts, justice has remained elusive. Crum-Ewing's peaceful protests outside the Attorney General's chamber demanded accountability and resignation and made him a target of intimidation and violence. Eyewitness accounts reveal the chilling moments leading up to his death as he fervently urged residents to vote against the ruling party, PPPC. His unwavering commitment to democratic principles and his fearless advocacy for change cost him his life, leaving behind a grieving family and a nation in shock. The subsequent findings of the government pathologist Dr. Niyal Singh confirmed the brutal reality of Crum-Ewing's demise, attributed his death to multiple gunshot wounds inflicted at close range. Yet, despite this damning evidence, justice has remained elusive, emblematic of the broader pattern of impunity and disregard for human rights under the PPP administration. Crum-Ewing's assassination serves a grim reminder of the dangers faced by those who dare to challenge entrenched power and advocate for accountability in Guyana. His tragic death joins the ranks of countless unsolved disappearances and murder, casting a dark shadow over the nation's democratic aspirations. As Guyanese citizens, we must never forget the sacrifices made by individuals like Crum-Ewing in the pursuit of justice and democracy. We owe it to his memory and to all those who have fallen victims to political violence to demand accountability, transparency, and an end to impunity. The legacy of Crum-Ewing serves as a beacon of hope and resilience, inspiring us to continue the fight for a more just and equitable Guyana. Let his memory fuel our determination to create a future where the voices of the oppressed are heard and where justice prevails over fear and intimidation. In the pursuit of justice for Crum-Ewing and all victims of political violence, we must remain steadfast in our commitment to upholding the principles of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. May his soul rest in peace, and may his memory be a catalyst for change. Well, I made a comment on social media this morning. His soul can rest in peace until such time that those who are responsible, including the intellectual authors, are brought to justice. And to follow up on it, they did charge Regan Rodriguez, called Grey Boy, for the killing. I think he got off eventually. All cook-up story. Because the public, any right-thinking person will tell you that even if Grey Boy was the triggerman as is alleged, or as they are alleged, he was not the intellectual author. He was not the intellectual author. And then, let me tell you further, and again, I say we can't forget these things. Cannot forget these things. And on February 18, 2016, it is reported Kwame McCoy arrested for Crum-Ewing murder. Kwame McCoy, same man who's a minister now. Or the same person, I should say, who's a minister now. Right? Arrested for Crum-Ewing murder. Then it says here, investigators probing the murder of social activist Crum-Ewing, Courtney Crum-Ewing, have arrested former press officer of the Office of the President under the PPP government, Kwame McCoy. McCoy was arrested yesterday after he turned himself into the police at the Criminal Investigation Headquarters, Ivleri. This was after police had visited his diamond house in Scheme Home, his Bangdam resident, to arrest him. McCoy is now the fourth person to be arrested for the week after investigators reopened the probe into the March 10, 2015 murder of Crum-Ewing. Earlier this week, police had arrested former Office of the President staffer Jason Abadullah, self-confessed hitman Sean Hines, and Okini Fraser. A reliable source close to the investigators said that detectives are obtaining vital information from the persons in custody. This newspaper understands that McCoy has been fingered by one of the persons. The source could not say if anyone else is on the police radar for Crum-Ewing shooting. Kaichor News was told that the suspects are being held at different police locations and that the authorities may be approaching the court to have them in extended custody since the stipulated time of detention is fast running out. Police have already charged Regan Rodriguez, called Grey Boy, for the murder, but investigators were always convinced that others were involved in the hit. One of the men in custody, Sean Hines, had in some explosive television interview fingered McCoy and Abdullah as being involved in the murder. However, under subsequent questioning by police, Hines remained mum until he was released after being in custody for 72 hours. Crum-Ewing was gunned down. Crum-Ewing was gunned down on March 10, 2015, while using a loud hailer in the Diamond community, urging persons to vote out the People's Progressive Party. His murder, which was always seen as politically motivated, outraged many Guyanese, who put pressure on the police to leave no stone unturned to find and prosecute his killers. That is a background as to what took place. Crum-Ewing, basically unsolved up to now. Let me bring in Mr. Conway, and then I have something more to tell you about the same murder. 10th anniversary today, and the people forget. People forget. No vigil, nothing planned to remind us of this brutal, this gruesome political killing. It was always felt it was a political killing. Because I've said before, even if the man who was charged as the trigger man, what was his motivation? Who were the intellectual authors? All of these things should have been gone into. Let me bring in back CC. CC, I'm sure you want to make a comment on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember Crum-Ewing very well, We met when I went to the Attorney General office to purchase some law books. And when I want to get my law books, I purchase them, I don't know like other people otherwise obtain, And we had a couple of minutes conversation. But when you look at it, he died. And for me, they just catch Grey Boy and charge him, But look at those persons who were arrested. They're all connected to the PPP. Remember, he started this protest at the Attorney General's office outside there. And they charged Grey Boy. maybe unjustly, and those persons that they arrested, Kwame and others, are all connected to the PPP. Maybe you can read through the line. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, well, it didn't end there because other people names were called of other persons. And there's an article on July the 24th, 2015. Remember, he was killed in March 10th. Today is the 10th anniversary. An article on July the 24th, 2015, which it says here, Anil Nandalal's ex-bodyguard detained for Crum-Ewing murder. And then his byline is former Attorney General denies involvement. Former Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandalal yesterday categorically denied any involvement in the assassination of political activist Courtney Crum-Ewing and said that an ex-bodyguard of his, who police have detained, was hired several days after Crum-Ewing's death. Nandalal made the denial during a press conference in which he repeatedly refuted suggestion that he or any members of the People's Progressive Party orchestrated the murder, which is being deemed a politically motivated killing. Nandlal met with journalists shortly after an online news reports stated that police had detained Rajput Narayan, his former bodyguard, in connection with Crum-Ewing's murder. Narayan, a former custom and anti-narcotics unit Kanu officer, was reportedly employed with the Guyana Revenue Authority, GRA, when Nandalal hired him as a bodyguard. But Nandalal said yesterday that he fired Narayan some 4 days after he employed him for unsatisfactory performance. Nandalal said that he did not do a background check on his bodyguard or ask for references because he had assumed Narayan was of good character. He was a former Kanu officer. He was a licensed firearm owner. He was in the employ of the GRA, and I assume he was a person of good character, and that is why he had a licensed firearm, which is a ground by which one is granted a firearm license. End of quote. Crime Chief Wendell Blenheim declined to confirm the suspects linked to the former AG or to release the name of the detained man. Police have also arrested an individual with a firearm that ballistic tests match to the one that was used by Crum-Ewing's killer. Nonetheless said that the police have not contacted him about the ex-bodyguard arrest, and he only learned of this development from online news source. Crum-Ewing was gunned down at Diamond scheme on March 10, 2015, while using a bullhorn to urge residents to vote for the APNU APNU plus AFC coalition. He had also protested for several days outside Nandalal's office while calling for the AG to resign. After his murder, some relatives alleged that Crum-Ewing had reported that he was threatened by 2 individuals, including a PPP official, while staging his protest. But Nandalal yesterday insisted that he had never spoken to or threatened Crum-Ewing. He also gave an alibi for his whereabouts at the time. Quote, let me say from the outset that Courtney Crum-Ewing protested for several months in front of the Ministry of Legal Affairs while I was a sitting Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, end of quote. During that time, quote again, during that time, I never once interacted or spoke to the individual. As far as I'm aware, no harm befell him while he was conducting his protest action at that location. There is absolutely an attempt to implicate me and the PPP in this horrendous act as part of a political design. I hope that the perpetrators will be brought to justice. End of quote. Reading from a statement, nonetheless said that Crum-Ewing was shot nearly 2 months after he had stopped protesting outside the Ministry of Legal Affairs. Quote, at the time, I was speaking at a political meeting in front of Kali Mandir at Timeri. Approximately 100 persons were in attendance, end of quote. He said that it was while returning from the meeting that he was informed of Crum-Ewing's death. According to Nandalal, quote, wild allegations, end of quote, immediately began to be made, implying that the PPP was involved in the killing. He said he was advised to hire security for his home as well as bodyguards. Quote, I contacted the Guyana Police Force and armed security from the force was provided at my house. And I was offered the opportunity to retain a person of my choice as my bodyguard, end of quote. But nonetheless said that he accompanied President Ramatar on a New York visit on 12th of March 2015 without securing the suggested bodyguard. He stated that while overseas, he met an old acquaintance, Antar Narain, and the Crum-Ewing issue came up. Antar Narain reportedly told Nandalal that he had a brother in Guyana, Rajput Narain, quote, who is a former Kanu officer and who is a licensed firearm holder and who is a person whom I can trust and that I should consider hiring him, end of quote. He gave, quote again, he gave me his brother's cell number. Upon my return to Guyana, I called the person and arranged to meet and met with him. I never knew him before, never spoke with him before, and never saw him before. I met him on the 15th day of March 2015 for the first time, end of quote. Quote again, I met him in the presence of my driver, who knew him before. He informed me that at that time, he was in the employ of the Guyana Revenue Authority, and I needed to write the Commissioner General and request his secondment. The following day, I did so and he commenced working with me. Quote again, however, importantly, my driver reported that he was disclosing our whereabouts to persons on his telephone. As a result, I told him that I will no longer require his services and sent him away. I took back a vehicle which was assigned to him as a backup to my vehicle. I next requested, quote here now, I next requested from the Commissioner of Police 2 members of the Guyana Police Force as my security detail. 2 officers of the force were assigned to me. They were recalled when I demitted office. After I sent away Rajput, I wrote to the Commissioner General, so informing him. Quote again, I hope I have clearly demonstrated that I only came into contact with Rajput Narain after the death of Courtney Crum-Ewing. I take this opportunity to deny any involvement whatsoever in that incident and to say that there's absolutely an attempt to implicate me and the PPP in this horrendous act as part of a political design. I hope that the perpetrators will be brought to justice. End of quote. Nandalal said that he couldn't recall whether he had seen Narain after firing him. The former Attorney General stated that he, Nandalal, quote, was not a very security conscious person, end of quote, and should have submitted his former security guard to, quote, greater background security prior to hiring him. The former Attorney General said that he is now concerned for his safety in the wake of the stories about the arrest of his ex-bodyguard for Crum-Ewing's murder. Quote, my desire has always been to serve the people of Guyana, and when one looks at the problem that befall you, as you attempt to do public service, then you really have to question it, if it is worth it, end of quote. Quote, I left a very successful practice to work with the government, and at some point, as a human being, you have to do some introspection to see if it is worth it, end of quote. That is what he says. But before I bring in Mr. Conway, let me read one more thing. Please indulge me. I gotta give y'all a full, you gotta understand where we are with this Crum-Ewing murder, you know. A lot of people will not be following it. So it is our duty to do research and to bring you the credible, valuable information. This is now a news item, Monday the 27th of March, 2017. Demerara Waves, written by Gary Eliezer. And the headline is, documents show Nandala lied about man questioned about Crum-Ewing's murder. Right? That's what the Attorney General then said. Let me read it. It's in all along. Documents residing in the Ministry of Legal Affairs purportedly show that former Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandalal might have been withholding facts when he distanced himself from Rajput Narain, his one-time bodyguard, who was questioned about the 2015 execution of political activist Courtney Crum-Ewing. This was disclosed by Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Basil Williams, who told the media over the weekend that Rajput Narain, a person of interest by the Guyana Police Force at the time, sought refuge in the ministry for much longer than had previously been let on by Nandalal. He was speaking to reporters on the sidelines of an outreach in Berbice on Sunday, March 26, 2017. According to the government's chief legal advisor, in pointing to the murder investigation of Crum-Ewing, quote, there was a man, Rajput Narayan, who immediately after the murder was taken in by Nandalal. Everyone knows it's for protection from the police who might be investigating the matter, end of quote. Williams said now that he is at the Ministry of Legal Affairs, he's in possession of the documentation to prove that Prasad was Nandalal, well, that's how I would say, being dishonest when he spoke to Narayan's relationship to the ministry. According to the Minister of Legal Affairs, Nandalal said, Rajput Narayan was only worked with him for 4 days, but I went in as Attorney General, and the record shows that Rajput Narayan was being paid for a much longer period than 4 days. Narayan was detained by the police following Crum-Ewing execution in Diamond, East Bank, Demerara, but was released. Nandalal has denied involvement in the assassination of Crum-Ewing and said Rajput Narayan, his ex-bodyguard, was hired several days after the incident. The Attorney General disclosed further that his predecessor, Nandalal, will be locked up for the alleged theft of law books from the state, a claim Williams has repeated in recent months, for which Nandalal has since threatened to sue. According to the Attorney General, Nandalal stole government money to do fertility tests for himself. He then stole our law books, and he will get locked up for the law books. He charged further, quote, if anybody else claims that they give him permission to steal government property, they will get locked up also, end of quote. Nandalal over the weekend met with media operatives and claimed ownership of the books referred to by Williams. According to Nandalal, the then President Ramatar approved as part of his contract as Attorney General the payment for his subscription for the Commonwealth Law Report to be done by government. The substantive Attorney General contends, however, quote, there is nobody that could get criminal immunity from criminal acts in this country, end of quote. So I'll give you all a mouthful there. To recap quickly, Courtney Crum-Ewing was gunned down on March 10th, 2015, Diamond, right? He was there urging people to vote out the then government, the PPP government. In other words, he was urging them to vote for the coalition, APNU plus AFC. He was shot and killed while doing that. Prior to that, he mounted a one-man protest outside the Attorney General, who was then an Nandalal office in Carmichael Street. He was gunned down. Following his killing, they arrested Kwame McCoy and others as suspects in this murder. Then, as I just read, it was being implied that the Attorney General then might have been involved, and he gave a statement that he denied. He gave a press conference, and he denied. But the murder are still left unsolved because, as we said too, they charged Regan Rodriguez, called Grey Boy, for the murder because I think, if my memory serves me correct, they carried out a search at Grey Boy's home somewhere in Royville and said they found a gun, unlicensed firearm, and when they did the ballistic check on that firearm, it showed that that was the gun used to kill Crum-Ewing. That in essence what it was. The question remained, even if Grey Boy was the trigger man, even if he did the shooting, what would have been his motive for killing this political activist? And who would have been the intellectual authors? These questions got to be asked and got to get answers. They have to ask. And again, I'm very surprised and even disappointed that the 10th anniversary has come up. And you hear nothing. This morning I bumped into it by chance because you should have had some big rally calling for justice to Crum-Ewing. We had the assassination of Ronald Waddle, nothing. You had an assassination of a minister under the PPP government, nothing, right? And these anniversaries are just slipping by, and the perpetrators, the intellectual authors, are still roaming around the place. Some of them are even pointing fingers at people who they know who is criminal. They know all who is criminal, but they don't report to these things. We will continue to come here on Speaking Out and to remind you of these incidents. We will remind you. We will continue to remind you. Let me bring in Mr. Conway, my colleague. He's chomping at the bits to have a piece of this. CC, let me hear you on this whole.
Yeah, as we mentioned, the charge Grayby, and you ask the question, did Grayby had a motive? When you don't commit the offense, you gotta get motive when you get an opportunity. Yes, maybe there's an opportunity, but what was the motive behind it? It couldn't be being Grayby, but just to maybe appease the public to say, hey, charge Grayby and left it. But they have to be intellectual authors. And I hope that some further investigation will be done, although I'm not confident thing, but that this thing there should be closure somewhere along the line in relation to the death of Crum-Ewing.
And many others. But Crum-Ewing, she said today is his anniversary. I remember speaking to his parents when I was conducting the Commission of Inquiry there. They came there, and the people are very distraught, and rightfully so. They need closure. They need closure. The country needs closure. The country needs closure into this matter, right? 10th anniversary, and again, as I've said, just slipping by, just like that, just slipping by. And some of the people who are suspected to have been involved, that they're around the place, calling out people and cussing out people, and the thing. But many of them, and Mr. Conway point out something just now which I need to bring to your attention. All right, you charge Grayby, but my training is that when you have incident, like when you have a murder, one of the key elements is for you to establish what would have been the motive. So if you say Grayby is the man who shot him, what motive would have Grayby, what would he add to say he killing this man? It wasn't a robbery. It was never established that any man had any beef, so he was trying to get even. It was clearly an assassination. And how do an ordinary man assassinate a political activist without being, without some intellectual author? That was never ever established. What was, if you said Grayby kill him, what would have been the motive of Grayby to assassinate Courtney Crum-Ewing? What would have been his motive? Because again, when you do that investigation, is one of the first things you want to know, what would be the motive for this man's death? And they have never been able to establish, even though they charge Grayby, they never have been able, as far as I know, to establish that Grayby had any motive to kill Courtney Crum-Ewing. But there's a God. Some of them don't believe, but there's a God. And he knows. And I said some of them will punish. Sometimes you watch some of them, you want to know, a lot of good people are dying. And they want to know why God is sparing their lives. But God's time is the right time. And many of them will punish. They will punish before they die. They will see hellfire. They can burn on earth for the wicked things that they have done and that they continue to do. Right? So to move on again, folks, we should not allow these things to go by. It is sad that nothing is being, his family, of course, the family may not have the means, but people should have organized. We should have had letters in the media reminding us, as we are doing here now, about this dastardly act of the assassination of Courtney Crum-Ewing on March 10, 2015. And as I've said, continue to rest well, fallen soldier. Continue